John Kirby is a US national security spokesman who's been awful throughout Israel's war on Gaza. In late October, he was relaxed about civilian casualties in the Strip.
Being honest about the fact that there have been civilian casualties and that there likely will be more is being honest, because that's what war is. It's brutal, it's ugly, it's messy. I've said that before. The president also said that yesterday. Doesn't mean we have to like it.
So he was very, very relaxed about civilians dying in the war. That's just a fact of reality. You know, you journalists, stop asking me difficult questions about it. And it was especially notable because of how it compares to John Kirby's reaction to civilian casualties when the dead people were Ukrainians.
It's hard to look at what he's doing in Ukraine, what his forces are doing in Ukraine, and think that any ethical, moral individual could justify that. It's difficult to look at the It's difficult to look at some of the images and imagine that any well-thinking, serious, mature leader would do that.
So clearly for Kirby, some lives matter more than others, which is presumably why he said in October that the US was imposing no red lines on Israel, a stance he repeated on the 8th of November.
In late October, you had referred to the fact that the administration is not drawing any red lines for Israel. As the death toll for civilians in the Gaza Strip has gone up, I wanted to ensure, is that still the case, that the administration has no red lines?
That is still the case.
So Palestinian lives don't really matter, and therefore Israel can do whatever they want, no red lines. It's a very consistent position from Kirby, and it's a stance which has been on show again this week.
I said this the other day. Again, people can say what they want on the sidewalk, and we respect that. That's what the First Amendment's about. But this word genocide is getting thrown around in a pretty inappropriate way by lots of different folks. What Hamas wants, make no mistake about it, is genocide. They want to wipe Israel off the map. They've said so publicly, more than one occasion. In fact, just recently. And they've said that they're not going to stop. What happened on the 7th of October is going to happen again and again and again. And what happened on the 7th of October? Murder, slaughter of innocent people in their homes or at a music festival. That's genocidal intentions. Yes, there are too many civilian casualties in Gaza. Yes, the numbers are too high. Yes, too many families are grieving. And yes, we continue to urge the Israelis to be as careful and cautious as possible. That's not going to stop, from the president right on down. But Israel is not trying to wipe the Palestinian people off the map. Israel's not trying to wipe Gaza off the map. Israel's trying to defend itself against a genocidal terrorist threat. So if we're going to start using that word, fine, let's use it appropriately.
So people can say what they want on the sidewalk, but the facts are this: Hamas wants genocide, but Israel is not trying to wipe Palestinians off the map. Israel is not even trying to wipe Gaza off the map. Now, who exactly has John Kirby been listening to? Presumably not Israel's defense minister, who said this: we are imposing a complete siege on the city of Gaza. There will be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we are acting accordingly. I assume John Kirby had ignored that statement. He just hadn't seen it. Maybe no one had briefed him. Presumably, Kirby has also ignored the military commander in charge of the occupied territories, who said this: Israel has imposed a total blockade on Gaza. No electricity, no water, just damage. You wanted hell, you will get hell. No genocidal language there. None at all. Or maybe Kirby just ignored it again. Now, perhaps Kirby was also otherwise occupied when an IDF spokesperson said, quote, the emphasis is on damage and not on accuracy in Gaza. And maybe his translator was taking a break when a defense official said, quote, Gaza will eventually turn into a city of tents. Of course, one can only assume Kirby didn't get the biblical reference when Netanyahu referred to Gaza as Amalek, meaning Israel should kill every man, woman, and child there. And nor did he notice when the finance minister said this: I agree with every word of Giora Aylan in this column. Now, the column in question proposed using epidemics as a weapon of war against the 2.2 million people in Gaza. So when it comes to genocidal language from the Israelis, John Kirby doesn't want to hear it. He's got his fingers in his ears. No? Hear no evil, see no evil. Other people are more concerned, though. Raz Segal is Associate Professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Stockton University. He thinks Israel is committing a genocide, and he explained why to Owen Jones. So he explained why Israel meets that definition.
Now, genocide, according to the UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide from December 1948, requires two main things. One is intent, and we're talking about special intent, and that's the high threshold that I was referring to. And the intent in the language of the convention means intent to destroy a group, and that's a national, ethnic, religious, or racial group, as such. Okay, now as such is very important because it means that members of the group need to be targeted as members of the group, not just as individuals, right? So the intent is very important. It's usually very, very difficult to prove intent, and that's why we have very few cases recognized as genocide since World War II. And then once you establish intent, you also need to show the dynamics of violence on the ground, that they are actually genocidal in the sense that they fall into one or more of the 5 acts of genocide listed in the convention, which is killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm, creating conditions calculated to bring about the destruction of the group. And then there's also preventing birth within the group or forcibly transferring children from one group to the other. Now, the case of Israel's attack on Gaza is actually very unique. It's actually exceptional, I think, in a number of ways, but it's unique in the sense of discussing it as what I think it is, that is genocide, because the intent is so clearly articulated, right? And it's articulated throughout Israeli media and society and politics now. And anyone who follows Hebrew language sources is exposed to shocking language by members of parliament, by journalists, on social media, in public spaces, calling to annihilate Gaza, to destroy Gaza, to flatten Gaza, to kill everyone, so on and so forth. But it's articulated since the 7th of October, actually, by people with what's called in international law command authority, right, or command responsibility. That is state leaders, members of the war cabinet, and senior army officers.
So according to Segal, genocidal intent has been expressed by the Israelis, and it's been expressed by the relevant Israelis, so people with command authority over how their military behaves. Raz then went on to describe what he believes constitutes Israel's genocidal actions. Now, they include, he says, the enormous civilian death toll from Israel's bombing campaign, which has damaged half its buildings. And then he said this.
When you think about the total siege proclamation, right, the cutting off of water, food, fuel, medical supplies, together with a forced displacement of more than 1.5 million Palestinians of the 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza so far, right, especially because Israel has ordered the evacuation of Palestinians from the north to the south, that now, in the last 6 weeks, have created, actually, in the language of the convention, conditions calculated to bring about the destruction of the group. Why? Because indeed, the siege has created what it was meant to create. That is, we now face starvation conditions in Gaza, right? Palestinians, they are facing starvation, surviving on less than 2 pieces of bread a day, 3 liters of water a day. Now, the World Health Organization recommends at least 100 liters of water a day for everything, cooking, washing, drinking. Of course, Palestinians are now surviving on 3 liters of water a day. Medical supplies have run out. Fuel is running out. We know that hospitals have been bombed. They have no medical supplies and fuel to do what hospitals need to save lives and treat people, certainly in a time of war. So we have now unbelievable overcrowding, conditions that are ripe for the outbreak of infectious diseases. So indeed, conditions calculated to bring about the destruction of the group in the language of the UN Convention. So we have both the intent and the dynamics of violence on the ground. And, again, because the intent is expressed so explicitly, so directly, in such unashamed ways, and it's continued to be expressed in this way, then I do think that what we're seeing in front of our eyes is a textbook case of genocide.
So Segal's assessment, this is a textbook case of genocide, is not universally held among scholars of genocide. There is disagreement among that community. He's also not an outlier, though. Yet for John Kirby, it's crazy to call Israel's government genocidal. He's saying it's Hamas that want genocide. Israel would never do anything like that. All they want to do is defeat a terrorist organization. It's just idiots on the street who might throw around this genocide word. Obviously, he's ignoring these genocide scholars who fundamentally disagree. Hamza, how would you respond to John Kirby?
I'd ask him how he sleeps at night. This is what complicity in the mass murder of Palestinians looks like. I mean, it's as grim as it is duplicitous. And the problem is, we see the refugee camps being targeted multiple times. We've seen hospitals being struck multiple times. We've seen schools being bombarded. We've seen UN shelters being attacked. Evacuation orders being issued, which a war crime in and of itself, and also those people being told to flee from the north to the south and then being bombed subsequently. I mean, the list is endless. And, even if it doesn't take scholars to kind of verify and to legitimize those claims, Palestinians have been saying for so long, why can't you just look with your own eyes and see the level of destruction and death and horror and, take a stance? But unfortunately, we know the name of the game. Israel gets unqualified and unconditional support, no matter the degree of its atrocities, because the only alternative from John Kirby and the rest of them is to hold Israel to account, is to question its campaign of mass slaughter, to ask the tough questions of it, but that by extension humanize the Palestinians, and we know that's simply not an option. And as I said, he's by no means alone in this. This is the playbook that the international community, unfortunately, has been operating from. The German foreign minister yesterday, I think, said the same thing. Said, we can't call for a ceasefire. We can't accept a ceasefire because every day Hamas makes it clear it wants to wipe Israel off the map. I mean, this was on the same day that I think it was Lapid, who's supposedly a moderate Israeli politician, and who himself is climbing up the polls, was saying actually all the number of deaths in Gaza, they're all terrorists and good riddance. So the language, as you said, as a scholar pointed out, matches the intent. The intent is complete annihilation, wiping Gaza off the map, and the mass murder of Palestinians. But we just keep being gaslighted. We keep being told, no, this is all about this is about Israel's right to defend itself, and this is actually when Palestinians are murdered and systematically murdered, actually that means Hamas wants to murder Israel and wipe Israel off the map. It's honestly, if it wasn't so heartbreaking, it's ludicrous. It genuinely is ludicrous.